Good evening, everyone. Hope all of you are doing well today. Have you ever tried something new or put yourself out there professionally or personally only to have a little voice inside your head tell you that not to bother, that you're not good enough, not brave enough, and to just give it up? If so, you are not alone. The feeling of not being good enough to accomplish our goal is our inner critic. Arif is an experienced mindfulness and meditation teacher with over 20 years of experience. He's based in Abu Dhabi and is one of the founding members of Inner Space Meditation Center. Arif also offers private wellness mentoring for individuals and groups. Today, he will be telling us about how do we integrate this inner critic. So I shall now hand over to Brother Arif. Let us all welcome him. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jabi. Um, and It's great to have this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you. And
Yes.
I will start by actually um, talking about this topic. Um, some some months ago, actually, last year, I was asked to do a workshop on inner critic, and it was a request from people around in this area because they noticed that, as you said, there is quite some damage that we do to ourselves um, when we deal with this inner critic or when the inner critic comes up. And so I was thinking, how is it that I would like to approach this subject? It was quite clear about inner critic, and because I don't think there's anybody who has not experienced this inner voice, which always criticizes. And My inclination, as I was thinking, was that there was different topic option, like the title, and when I thought about it, I said I need something that is more effective than other methods that I thought that would be useful for everyone and myself. And being a meditation teacher, being a mindfulness person who's been practicing mindfulness, um, violence is not a thing that is very comfortable with us and with many people in general. And so there were things like crushing the inner critic, destroying the inner critic, finishing the inner critic, and so on and so forth. And you will find actually, if you look on the subject, there are many ways to destroy the inner critic. And I thought that I wouldn't like to go that way. I would like to maybe integrate, make friends with the inner critic. And I was not wrong, actually. I found that there was a whole therapy which was based on integrating the inner critic. And I started researching and I started looking into the subject, and I found that there was something called IFS, which was started by somebody by the name of Dr. Richard Swartz. And he developed this through experience because you might be familiar with family system therapy, which basically it deals with a person's challenging by looking at that person's family structure, who is living with them, how are the relationship with the family. And this gentleman found out that just like we have a family outside, we also have a family here inside us. And that was fascinating for me because it said, if it is a family, then I need to understand that and I need to explore this subject. And this is how integrating the inner critic came to happen. And then since then, I've done many workshops on this subject, and it was very, very well received. And a lot of people have gained a very clear understanding about the inner critic, and just that understanding was sufficient for them to actually start working on their own inner critic. um, and For those people who have bigger challenges, then there are other options, like you can find somebody who's a coach and who can actually help you to work with the inner critic. I have done some sessions with people in this topic, and it's really amazing. Now, I would like to go one step back. When we talk about inner critic is just one part of a whole picture. So, in general, what I said was this family that we have inside, it's not only critic. There are many different characters that reside in us. Um, so we are actually multiple personality in that sense. We don't have a disorder. It's not the disorder. I'm just saying that there are others as well with us, and they can be um, having different roles in our life. So we're going to explore today specifically about these parts that we call inner critic. And then we're going to look into how they came about, who are they, and I'm saying they because there are different kinds of inner critic. And then we will explore a methodology that will help us to understand and to see if we can do something about this inner critic. And if we have time, then at the end, you might have a chance actually to experience this process, if we have time, and we can do that as well. So, where do we start? Let us start about something very practical. So, like for example, um, just to understand a little bit more about inner critic. At this moment, as I'm speaking to you, there might be some voices at the back. Arif, are you prepared? Are you sure what you're gonna say is gonna be right? Is the background okay? Is there something maybe wrong? Are you looking nice? All these things will keep coming in your mind, um, and this is basically the voice of the inner critic. And sometimes it can actually take you away from what you're trying to do, and because this voice might be a bit too loud and too harsh, and they really, like this part, they want to be heard. And usually that's how it happens, like we have this kind of voices that appear in no way, just like Jabin mentioned, that you're trying to do something challenging for the first time, and no, 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 you can't. And then the other, these parts are not just singular. As I said, they are multiple, and sometimes one part might actually want you to do something, and another part might want you to do something else, and you will see that they are in conflict, and therefore you get into conflict because you don't know what to do. Yeah, so one side you want something and another side is telling you that no, you can't do. So we call them different parts. Yeah, and that's how the part system work. Um, so just a kind of defining a little bit about inner critic is that that part of you that judges you, that part that demeans you, that part that tells you who you should be, that part that undermines your confidence and makes you feel bad about yourself. We can look at that as inner critic, but it's not just that. Okay, that's how it appears to us. Okay, but we will try and understand um, a little bit more about where this inner critic started, where did they start, how do they work, why are they there, what's the purpose, because why would I have um, something inside me that wants to make me feel bad? It doesn't make sense to me. Why should I have a part like that? And we all know that at some point of time we have heard these voices, we have heard this sound of the inner critic. Just like as I said, um, they are there on an interview, they are there on the the work that you've done, and you've put in so much effort, and you still feel that it is incomplete, and you're still finding, maybe I can improve something. And that is because of this pressure from the inner critic that comes and starts speaking. So what's the history? How do they come about, and who are they? So in this system that I'm going to share with you, we don't generally, the inner critic falls under um, the parts that are generally called the protectors. Okay, and just like the word suggests, a protector is here to protect you. Okay, so their main purpose is actually to protect you. um, the means, usually they don't feel like that, but really they're there to protect you. And um, if they are not that great, why are they there? There are two reasons. One is the beliefs that we develop as we grow up from childhood to teenage to adulthood. All these beliefs, they keep them there. And the second thing that keep this inner critic there is past experience and past memories. The past experience and past memories. And what the inner critic, how are they protectors? They say that, look, the last time your mom or dad said something to you, like when you were young, um, it felt very horrible. These are the people that I love, and they say something so harsh to me because I haven't done something to up to their standards, or I have, somehow made a mistake, you know, or for any reason, or maybe you are in class and in front of 20 students or 30 or 40 students, if you are from a place where I studied. Um, the teacher says something, in front of the other, and then, oh my God, such a shame, and the these parts, the inner critic, actually they start emerging from that time. And because you are young and you don't know what to do, and you feel horrible about yourself, you feel so much shame, feel so much guilt, you feel so much down, you feel so much useless, you know um, this part starts developing. And what they do is they try to um, balance that pain that you have, because when you feel like this, um, it's a horrible feeling, and sometimes you tend to actually um, be very harmful to yourself, you know and in order for you to be protected is to make sure that you fit in, to make sure that you don't do a mistake. So how can I make sure that you don't do a mistake? I just keep on criticizing you. So I criticize you, tell you that, look, there's something, even if it is not there, even if it is something that you are confident, I will still make you feel like that, so that you don't you pay attention, and so that you are alert, and so that you do your best. Okay, so you can see the idea here. The idea is that the inner critic actually is a protector of your feelings and emotions, and these are based on very early days in your life. Another example would be your friends. Maybe they were teasing you about something, you were too short or too tall, or you too dark, or your hair was like this. And then, oh my God, I need to make sure that, whatever they were talking about, whatever, they were starting to say to you, even when you are 30, 40 years old, you will still respond in the same way. I don't know if you can relate, but I have so many things that without any reason, something very neutral, but I was so careful about, because some people or a group of people were laughing at me at a certain age in my life, and because of that, I need to kind of hide that. I need to kind of protect myself, and this is where this inner critic they come, and they come in full force. So let's move a little bit forward and start getting acquainted of the different um, different characters or different parts of this family of the inner critic. As I said, there are many parts. One part of the different parts is called the inner critic. Under this inner critic, there are like um, seven different critics. Okay, and again, as I continue to explain you about these different inner critics, just try and see if you can relate to them, in your own life, in your own experience. Have you ever met the perfectionist? So the perfectionist wants everything to be perfect. Okay, this is one of my major inner critic. Maybe because I was born in September, but or I don't know why, but this inner critic always wanted me to be perfect, and if there was anything less than perfect, it would try to tell me, just leave it. If it is not perfect, just leave it. Don't do it. Don't go there. Yeah. It sets a high standard of things that you produce, and has difficulty in saying that something is complete and letting, it's okay. It's fine. It's not perfect, but it's fine. It tries to make sure that you fit, and that you will not be judged and rejected by others. Because it kind of thinks that whatever you produce, however you look, that's you. And if that's not perfect, then it's too risky. Yeah, its expectation is probably reflect those people who have been important. So like somebody important in your life who expected a certain standard, they kind of put this seed of belief, and therefore a perfectionist was created. And remember, this is not you. This is just a part of you. This is not you. This is just a part of you. Yeah, and it is representing you as a protector. It's just trying to protect you. Another one is the guilt tripper. Have you ever met the guilt tripper? So the guilt tripper basically just wants you to feel guilty. And the reason that it wants you to feel guilty is that if it makes you feel guilty, you will not repeat the mistake. Okay. So the guilt tripper way of working is that um, they make sure that you feel guilty about something, and therefore um, you won't be a wrong person. You would be following the norms of the society and the standard of the community and the behavior that you're expected to. Yeah, just like when you tried maybe in some years, to try express yourself, and then suddenly something went wrong, and then it backfired, and the guilt tripper said, this is not going to happen again. I will make sure to make you feel guilty if you didn't follow such and such a thing, or if you didn't conform to certain religious or norms of the society. Yeah, so it tries to protect you from repeating past mistakes, and make sure that you never forget or feel free from them. So it will remind you, remember, and at that time this is what you do. You were 5 years old or 7 years old, and this happened. Are you going to make a fool out of yourself again? And do you want to be isolated from the group or from your friends or whatever? So this is the guilt tripper. The next inner critic is the underminer. The underminer, basically, this critic tries to undermine your self confidence, yeah, and self esteem, so that you won't take risks. It doesn't want you to take risks. It makes you direct, like it just attacks you directly, your self worth, yeah, so that you continue to stay small. Because if you feel a little bit like you having confidence, then you will take a risk. And when you will there was a time where you did take a risk and maybe things didn't go right, and you felt very horrible or ashamed about yourself, yeah. So it's basically afraid of you being too big, too visible, you know, too famous. Some people are afraid to be famous. People are afraid to do something good, because if they do something good, then people will expect them to continue to do good. So the underminer is the perfect critic here. And what it does is it just takes your confidence. It makes you feel that no, you can't, don't do it, don't try it, or if you don't listen, it say, okay, try it after 1 month. So it can play postpone. It can postpone it for you, and then by then you've forgotten. You're not going to do that. You know. So that's the underminer. You did try to lose your weight several times and it didn't work. I mean, what's the point? Just you can't do it. Just leave it. It's okay. So this is the voice, and then there is a little bit of a hard one, and this one is a masculine kind of one, and it's the destroyer. The destroyer makes you, like it attacks you so badly, like it really kinds of beats you up in a way. Like, have you seen people do something and then they start beating themselves up? This is actually a kind of an inner critic that is called the destroyer. It shames you, make you feel, like you are dishonest, you're flawed, um, you're not entitled any respect. Um, uh, it kind freezes you, you know, and and it doesn't do just like that, because there was a trauma that happened in the past. Okay, so don't feel that this the way of the destroyer is bad. It's not bad, but because there was a trauma in the past, it doesn't want you to go through that again. Yeah. I remember a very small incident. We had an accident, and in my mind as a child, it was, well, there were some people were hurt. I was okay, but I couldn't get into the car for maybe, like, I mean, I did go in a car, but I was very uncomfortable every time I entered the car for a period of maybe 1 year. I was very, very uncomfortable because I had faced that situation. And when I think about it, and I think about the scene when I was thinking about it later, it it was just a normal accident. I had myself, I had some accident after that. And, it was just nothing major really. But, people had to go to hospital. But it left me every time I entered the car, that memory, just remember, this happened. And this is why you have to deal, or these parts that are trying to protect you will do and will go to this, to this level, limits, just to try and protect you. And the next one of the inner critic is the molder. um, have you seen how the sculptor sculpts, like a stone and all? It chips, every bit and pieces. because it wants a particular image. And the molder is just like that. It tries you to get you to fit in a kind of a mold or the standard, which is again um, determined by the country, society, the family, or whatever it is. Yeah. And it will try and make sure that you are carved in such a way that you are fitting in that particular situation. It wants you to be liked, it wants you to be admired, you know it's protecting you from being left out, abandoned, and shamed or rejected. Yeah. So typically in situation where um, there is a possibility of you being praised, accepted, or maybe even liked. You know, the this mold critic will try and mold you inside so that you behave in a certain way. Some people call it like having the mask. Having a mask is actually taking an image, yeah, of something that you actually are not, but you're trying to be. So that at least um, um you actually um, um, feel better and not feel rejected or ashamed. Yeah. um, what the molder is afraid of is that sometimes we have this nature of being free and doing what we want. And in order to balance that, we have this inner critic, which is the molder. Yeah. So far we have seen the perfectionist, we have seen the guilt tripper, we've seen the underminer, the destroyer, and the molder. And there are a couple of more. Um, and this is quite, again, familiar, especially to the people who are used to, workaholics and people um, who get their identity from what they do. You know, again, it's a nice bonus for this taskmaster to be there. So what taskmaster does, it wants you to work hard and be successful. So it's going to be telling you consistently that you're lazy. Yeah. It'll tell you that, you can't achieve too much. You're just mediocre. Um, you know, um you'll be judged, because you are always going to fail. Um and then it often, it it's pushing often activates the procrastinator. Yeah. So when you uh, when you see that procrastinator coming up, this is another part that works. When the taskmaster is a lot, then the procrastinator is trying to limit the taskmaster. Yeah. So let's not, we will do that another time. Yeah. And taskmaster don't like procrastinator, and they don't get along. So often there is a clash between these two parts. Yeah. But taskmaster also has his own way, because um, like, try and see one day and just sit and don't do anything and see what happens. Even now, just try and see, okay, I'm not going to do anything. And it just, it just erupts from inside. Just it doesn't like you just to sit. And for me, being in this work of teaching people meditation, this is one of the biggest challenge. People don't understand, why am I going to sit for half an hour or 1 hour, staring at point, or looking at my breath. The taskmaster doesn't like that. Because for it, it's like, you're wasting time, you're useless, you're lazy. And I have to really convince people that pausing or taking break, or using this time is not really, you're not going to be less productive, but you're going to be more productive. So anyway, by the way, on that. And the last one is the inner controller. So this is the, like, the headmistress, kind of inner headmistress or headmaster. or you know um, in different places you have that, the monitor, or a boss that wants to control you. And this critic tries to control your impulses, like, for example, um, eating or drinking or enjoying. It just tries and uh, tell you that, no, this is bad for you, don't do this. You shouldn't have that, you should have this, you shouldn't go there, you should go there. you know Not only just in food, but in many different areas. Okay. So um, it fears that you'll get out of control. So the main fear with this controller is just doesn't want you to get out of control. And then, it's trying to motivate you to make you a good person. Again, acceptance, and a good citizen. Okay. So it is always trying to control you. Yeah. And control is, yeah, through these thoughts. Yeah. And therefore these are the the seven different shades, if you like, of the inner critic. So having seen this, and having understood that, these are the varieties that you can have, and maybe you might have more, but these are, broadly speaking, these are the different sounds that you might um, become aware, and notice that inner critic has come. And they always, as I said, they come in your the thoughts that they generate. So now let's move on, and let's try and look at what to do about this. And as I said, I'm not going to recommend that we crush, or we destroy, or we finish. We'll try and see if there is a peaceful way to actually handle this inner critic. Yeah. And the way that this IFS system deals with inner critic is that it tries to separate the critic first, because as I said, there are many, and in a crowd, if you're trying to talk to one person but the other people are talking, it's very difficult to talk to one. So it uses this method whereby um, we just pinpoint one critic, and we start engaging with that critic. Yeah. And the reason we do that is that we are seeking to understand, just like I have, gone in details the different kinds of critics. Um, um, in the same way, that critic who is active at that point of time has a purpose, and the only way to know the purpose is to actually start engaging. So some of you might be familiar of the method that is called self-talk, and we always do this self-talk. Maybe naturally it just happens. You start talking to yourself, and there are two kind of people engaged in a conversation in one person. Yeah. So so the first thing to understand, and to make just very very clear in your mind, is that there is no parts, including the inner critic, that is bad. There is no part which is inside us which is bad. So we don't want to go in that direction. We just have to try to understand that um, they are just there, and the reason that they are there is to actually protect us. Okay, so this is the first thing, but you need to kind of see this clearly, and therefore the process is important. Yeah. um, and out of all this part, above this part, there is another um, another thing that I've been referring to, me, or the I. And this is actually not a part. Okay, the parts are there, and they are created, whereas I exist. Okay, I'm not created, I exist. Okay, and we call this I the self. Okay, so actually, when we say integrating the critic or doing or talking or dealing with it, who is dealing with whom? Okay, the self is the one that is dealing with uh, the critic. Yeah. So just remember the self, and the self is not a part. The self is actually you. So you are the one who's talking to that part of you that has come about because of some old memory that went wrong, and this part is actually trying to protect you from that memory to come back again. Yeah. So let's make this very, very clear, because when we understand this, then the process becomes easy. Another thing is to understand the self. Okay, so the self also has quality. The self is curious. Okay, and this is very, very important to be curious about what's going on inside. It's always calm. It's compassionate. It's um, it's always confident. Okay, so it's exactly the perfect, the perfect part of me. um, it has clarity. It is uh, it's um, it has this connectedness. It can connect. It can relate. Yeah, and it is courage. Um, and I don't think I've left any clarity. Okay, maybe clarity. Yeah. And it always has clear vision of what's going on. So eight um, qualities of the self are curiosity, calm, compassionate, confidence, clarity, creativity. Yes, creativity was it. Creativity, connectedness, and courage. Yeah. So these are the eight um, um, qualities of the self. Now, this is powerful, okay? But always we have noticed that the inner critic gets the best part of us, okay, rather than the self. Yeah. Why? Because the inner critic was already there and was already taking care of things, and then it became the authority of my decisions, and it just kept going. Unless I come in and I start doing something about it, it will always continue to be like that. Yeah. So what is it that I can do? I can start engaging, and I'll just go through um, an example um, of how a session or a therapy might go. Let's say, for example, I was doing something with someone who had a problem with the inner critic. So what I would do, I'll just go through the example, and we'll see if we have time. We can do one live with you guys just now. So how would it go? Is that I would ask, how do you feel about the inner critic? So I would ask the person that I'm working with, how do you feel about the inner critic? And then the person might respond, oh, I hate the inner critic. It always, puts me down, and this one. So who do you think is responding to me? Who do you think is responding to me? So this is not the inner critic that is responding, obviously. This is another part that actually doesn't like the inner critic. So remember, there is all sort of parts inside me, and there are parts that you know they know that this is not good, and he's that the part that feels hurt when the critic criticizes me. Okay, so this is that part that wakes up first, because I asked the question, how do you feel? And obviously the inner critic would say, oh, wonderful. But this part gets a chance and it comes out. But remember, we do not want to deal with that part. We are dealing with the inner critic. So we want to invite the inner critic. So what we would do, we would tell that part that, okay, we hear you, but at the moment we would like to engage with the inner critic, and we would like to see, and then we can look at your case later. And we always ask permission, so we ask permission that, can you please step aside so that I can deal with the other one. And when I'm talking like this, in an actual situation, this sounds very like, like, really, really. These answers that I'm giving, they're not coming from the mind. These answers come from deep inside. And even the person that works this process out is amazed that where actually this the inner critic's voice, how does it appear and why does it say like that. um, in my experience, I have had examples of people being surprised about what they said themselves, because they can't believe, so when the inner critic, when I am able to engage, and this needs practice, but this also can be done by yourself. So don't worry that you need somebody. You can try and you can get a response. But as I was saying, the inner critic's voice comes out as the inner critic. So it could go like this. Um, so I would continue. Now I've got the inner critic, and I would ask, thank you for being there, and what do you want? Why do you keep on criticizing me? You know, and then you would notice that an answer comes. At that point, when I'm asking this question, um, don't try to use your head to get an answer. Just go deeper inside and see what answer comes up. Yeah. So um, the inner critic might actually before that, you can try and even locate. So once you engage with, before even asking more question, just try and see if you could locate the inner critic in your body. Yeah, so you would I would ask, can you locate the inner critic, which part of your body? Usually it's somewhere in the head area. And you would say, okay, I can feel the inner critic in this part of my body. So, and then I would ask you, can you see the inner critic? What kind of symbol does it hold, or what image do you get? And sometimes you get, sometimes you don't. That's also fine. And then you go into asking, um, you know um, why is it there? What is it trying to do? And it might just come up and say that, if I don't criticize, then you will make a mistake. Yeah. So it might just, if I didn't do this, then you will make a mistake, and I'm here to protect you from making mistake. Or it might say that, if I am not there, then you will be hurt, or because of some reason, and that's why I'm there. Or it might say that you might take a risk and you will fail, and that's why I'm there, to make sure that you don't um, um, make that mistake. So what happens is, um, when I hear that, now I'm in a conversation, I want to understand, I'm very curious, and really, from my heart, I want to engage with this part, that happens to be very damaging to my self-esteem. But at the same time, there might be some good reason why they're there. And now suddenly I start having a different feeling about that. I feel more compassion. I feel um, maybe even sorry about this part that had to go through all this trouble, to try and protect me, and was not definitely doing a good job in doing that, but didn't do anything, didn't know anything better, and continued to um, continue to do what it did. So, and then I start changing my attitude and my engagement with this particular part. And then I start saying that, okay, if I were to take care of that part that is painful, because it is, the critic is protecting ask from that child, from that boy who got ashamed, who was teased, or who was every day reminded how useless they are with some people that loved. It could be their parents, it could be some close relation. So always, that you never do anything right. You always, whenever I tell you this, you always make a mistake. That part that is hurt. Um, the self asks permission from the protector to actually try to heal that child that is actually, you know that the protector is protecting you from, from that eruption. And if you get that, then you start engaging with the child, um, with a lot of love, with a lot of compassion. And what happens is, when the child is okay, it doesn't need to, it's comfortable, it's relaxed, it doesn't need to kind of, bring these emotions from the past. The protector doesn't have a job to try to protect you from it. The protector becomes free. Your energy comes back to you, because the protector takes some energy from you, and a lot of energy, because criticism is not easy to manage. Yeah. And therefore you start being able to manage everything. Okay, there is harmony in your family, you know and that's how it works. So I'll just pause here, and we'll see. We have 15 minutes, yeah, and we have to take Q&A. um, shall we do the Q&A first, or shall we do the practice first? I think we have time for a quick practice.
Yes, brother, we can try with the quick practice. I think it would be
Let's do the
interesting.
practice first.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, so the only instruction that is there is, when I'm giving you this question, obviously there are many people who are on the group, so it is not customized. I'm just going to make it general. Usually I work with one person at a time, um, but we can do something, and you'll have to be a bit more creative in trying to work with yourself. um, and I'll help you to guide you through it. So um, the thing to note is that, don't try to answer from your mind. Don't use your mind or your mental capacity to try and answer this question. Just go and feel the answer, rather than thinking of the answer. Just feel the answer. Okay. So we'll start now. Okay, so if you have a pen and a paper, it's good. You can make a note of your answers, and you might be surprised by the answers that you give. And if you don't have, that's fine. You just make a mental note um, of the answer. Okay, so first I need to take you into the feeling. So see which kind of inner critic that you were most familiar when we were going through the list of the inner critic: the perfectionist, the underminer, the taskmaster, the destroyer, whichever one that you were most familiar with. Just try and hear that voice of that inner critic. Okay, you can even um, try and go and remember an incident that happened recently where you felt this inner critic very strongly. Don't take a major crisis, please. Just take something that is medium. Don't go in a like a very big that actually affected you a lot. Try and take something that is moderate to little less high, but not too less. Yeah, I'm sure we know the inner critic. We can hear them regularly, so you'll find. So I would like you to. You can even close your eyes in this practice, if you like. I would like you to now try and see if you can um, become aware of your body. try and see if you can locate your inner critic. Try and see if you can see which part of your body the inner critic seems to be lodged. Maybe try and see if there is any image that comes up as you look at this inner critic. It could be maybe somebody with a whip, or somebody with an authority, somebody who's trying to control you, or maybe a perfectionist. There is an image of a perfectionist. Just see if you can get a symbol or image of that inner critic. And now we are ready. So we are coming from the self, from the space of the self, and we are ready to have a conversation with the inner critic and thank the inner critic for being there, and ask the inner critic a question. You might actually, at this point of time, want to name that inner critic. You can think of any name of a real name, or you can make up the name. So whoever that inner critic, just address them and say that, look, so and so, I've noticed that you've always been criticizing me, and it has always been very hurtful for me. It's not been easy that I had to deal with this constant criticism, constant feeling unworthy, and ask that part, why is it did you do this, or why is it you're doing this? Why is it that you're doing this? And then again, just wait for the answer to come. Don't rush. Listen to that voice that just appears and responds to you. The reason I'm doing this is because if I didn't do this, so and so might happen. And in order for me to protect you from such and such a thing to happen, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm criticizing you. This is why I'm sabotaging you from success. Whatever it is that it does. If you like, you can make a note of the response. And now let's go one step further. Ask yourself now, how do you feel about this inner critic? The way you used to look at it before, and how do you see it now? You might feel that you now understand why they're there. You might not be so put down by the inner critic, because now you know and understand the reason why they're there. You might even have compassion, or you might even go one step and be thankful for them protecting you. And this moment, you also know that that's the best thing that they knew. They didn't know anything better. And therefore, it's not their fault. because the reason they're there is that there is something that is paining within yourself. So all this reflection might be going through your mind as you now look at your inner critic in a different eye with a new insight to what's their purpose, why are they there. Now I would like you to again engage with the inner critic. If you have a name, call the inner critic by name, see the image, feel where it feels. All this is going to help you to get the answer very easily. And if you don't have any of this, that's fine. Don't try to create anything from your mind. If it is not there, it's not there. That's also fine. Now, I would like you to ask the inner critic, would it give us permission to try and heal that part that it is trying to protect us from? Would it permit us? And you are not going to answer this. The inner critic will either say yes or no. If the inner critic says no, you will stop the exercise here. If the inner critic says yes, you will continue to follow the exercise from here. And if said no, you can try it again another time. Assuming that we've got a yes, I'll go ahead. Now go deep down and connect to that child, the boy or the girl. Usually, the protection is needed for the weak one, for the one that cannot help themselves. So go to that child and offer a lot of love and compassion. Maybe hold it. You might be able to see it. Hold it in your hands. Bring it closer. Give it a hug. And just calm it down without any judgments. Acknowledge their feelings, their pain, and tell that part, which is in the form of a child maybe, that it's okay that you are there now for them, that you will make sure that nothing like this happens, that you are the parent of that child. You are the mother and you are the father of that child. And whatever that child needs, you're going to provide that for the child. And saying this, just see the reaction of the child. Look at it on the face, eye to eye, and see how does the child feel now. You might notice initially there might have been fear, and maybe now they are more relaxed, they are more at ease, and they are more willing to let go of that pain. And now, thank the child for giving you that time. Thank the protector for allowing you to engage with that child for that part. And using this process now, come back to this present moment and take a deep breath in and slowly let go. Take another deep breath in and slowly through your mouth let go. And if your eyes are closed, slowly open your eyes and come back. in the present moment. So basically,
Thank you.
just a glimpse of what you can do, but there is a lot more. But considering the time, I think this is just to give you an idea of what you can do by yourself.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Arif. There were some of them who could not hear you because you were pretty soft, but it was nice how you created this atmosphere of having a dialogue with the inner critic and bringing in as a child, nurturing it, giving it love. So, like you said, how in the beginning of this, that let's not crush it, let's come to terms with it, accept it, and integrate it, get over it. So it's a nice dialogue. So whenever we have this situation where we feel the inner critic coming on very strongly onto us, what we can do is probably we can sit back and try and do this practice again, as if like having a dialogue. And first of all, we would like to identify, for me myself, this is definitely an eye-opening session today, that first of all I would like to see which one is the inner critic that is most dominant. For me today, I would like to just share a little bit, is that I felt the taskmaster was very dominating. And based on that, my first question would be that it could be also that the inner critic is helpful. Is it possible?
See, the the self is the most helpful one. The self deals with it, it has all those capacities to handle that situation. The inner critic is a good reminder, okay? But I the self, can best handle whatever it is, because the wisdom of the self is much, much more. Yeah. But the reminder from the inner critic is always good. And therefore, now you remember, like, let's say, for example, we sorted out this, the inner critic is free. And I can tell the inner critic, now that you are free, please do remind me, in a gentle way, that look, I mean, how many people have changed because of being criticized? You criticize somebody, they don't like it, and they're not going to change. Yeah. So, and it hurts. Yeah. But it is good as a reminder. So you can talk to the inner critic and he said that, okay, could you tell me like this instead of like that? So it's good in that way.
Okay, that's a very nice way, that can you tell me like this instead of like
Yeah.
this, so you can have a dialogue with it.
Yeah.
Make it your friend, basically. So my next question is, how do we behave with people who trigger this voice or this inner critic?
It's a very nice question. How you behave with your critic will determine how you behave with the outer critic. Yeah. The
Mm.
way you behave with your inner critic will determine now. The outer critic, right? The question was how to deal with uh, those people who are, uh,
Who trigger this inner voice?
yeah, they either trigger that, or they actually might actually criticize you. The reason they are triggering it is because their inner critic gets triggered.
Mm.
And because their inner critic gets triggered, they trigger something in you. Okay. So just, like when I understand that my critic is a part of me that is trying to protect me, in the same way that person's critic is the critic that is trying to protect that person. So I don't feel I'm being attacked. I'm just seeing somebody trying to protect themselves, and they might be asking me to help them, or they might be protecting themselves from my critic criticizing them. So you can figure out there's a lot of things there, but you can understand relationships are dependent upon how I deal with my critic, and therefore how I deal with other people's inner critic. Yeah. So this is a very good um, a tip to how we can see other people. When somebody comes and says, how, or kind of, um, becomes that one that triggers your inner critic, then you know that there is a reason why they're doing that. Because now you know that they have parts as well. Yeah, I think that makes a little bit of sense.
Yes, it makes sense. So it's kind of a domino effect, what we call as the domino effect. Okay, the next question is, when should we start to worry that the inner critic or the inner voice gets in our way?
The moment there is disharmony, the moment there is a feeling of discomfort, um, I mean, you don't have to get worried, but you have to pay attention and start engaging. So anytime I feel a little bit of discomfort, even physically, I start asking myself, what's going on? I'm just kind of throwing the question to the parts. What's going on inside? What's my family? How is my family doing? You know, or I can just wake up in the morning and I say, good morning, to these parts. And I say, how are you guys today? And what's going on there? And you will be amazed. They are so cooperative, because they don't want to do this work. They don't like doing this work either, but the reason they're doing it is because you're not doing anything. So the moment you come in and you start taking care of yourself, then it starts to get relaxed. And there will be those moments of the very deep things that we have suppressed, and they will come at no time, and you will immediately see one part trying to defend, um, trying to protect you. And there are sometimes quite just understanding this model changes our perception of life. I don't see life the same way as I was seeing it before, because this is not about inner critic, it's about any kind of feeling that you're going through, and you can understand that there is a reason why you're feeling like that. I'll give you an example. At night you're going to try and sleep, and you're not getting sleep. Okay. And we might say, okay, let me go, let me see a doctor, something is happening, da 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 da. And it's a very simple part, and that part is telling you that I am not going to let you sleep until you listen to me. Because during the day when I'm trying to get your attention, you're not giving me, I'm not going to allow you to sleep. You see? So it's very clever. And then I'm trying to fix my sleep. Actually, I just need dialogue. I just needed a dialogue, you know, and see what is he saying. So when you go into this, actually, the whole life starts showing you different. So these people that I'm seeing, when I'm talking to Jabin, I'm not talking to Jabin. I'm talking to a part in Jabin. You know, you see what's happening. So that is the big picture. And when I see that I'm talking to a part, I'm not going to blame you because it's a part that is speaking on your behalf. So that's how it works.
It's like a child that demands attention of the mother at that time. And when the mother doesn't give, it just throws a tantrum or a fit. Okay. Another question is that, like you said, that there is the taskmaster, and on the other hand, probably there is the procrastination bit. So, if we want to use the procrastination bit, which is also a critic, I believe, to overcome or to subdue the procrastination and to awaken the taskmaster, is it possible?
Um, yes, I know this is quite a thing that because we don't like one and we want to use the other part. Rather than that, I would say um, the inner critic is gonna guide me in uh, in where I need to move, the procrastinator is actually again not procrastinator is not a bad one, because procrastinator is going to allow me to pause. So the procrastinator, as we know, and the inner critic, as we know, they are very negative. But the actual procrastinator and the actual inner critic, they are not negative at all. Yeah, the procrastinator is very important because it doesn't allow me to just go into things. You know, and yes, in the traditional way, procrastinator is a very, like, I don't achieve anything, you know but it's not really true. What it's trying to say is that don't do it. You're not ready to do it. Just pause. So that is good. And the critic, warning me, is good. So I use that part in them, and I don't use the other part, which is the delaying unnecessarily, so that I don't do. And they could be also collaborating sometimes, that might be an inner critic that doesn't want me to do and uses the procrastinator to procrastinate. So they might be collaborating as well. These parts, by the way, they collaborate and they also fight among one another. So just leave this idea that you want to continue to use the power, and just you become responsible, and you can do a better job. Remember, you went in, you met the inner child. In the same way, there is a reason why you don't want to, or it's heavy. So engage that, and ask, why are you making it? Why are you procrastinating? Just engage. And then integrating means to resolve it. Yeah. So then the procrastinator disappears in a way, or goes behind the scene. So you have helped it, and you didn't use even the inner critic.
Thank you very much, brother. That was so helpful. And yeah, it was very, very informative, an eye opener, definitely. And we definitely need to sit down and work from within. And we need to have this inner dialogue within ourselves and try to nurture this inner child, like you said. Thank you very much once again for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Our next session is on the 31st of October, on Saturday again. But this time, our session will be at 10 in the morning. So do drop me a message. I've dropped my number in the chat box. Do drop me a message so that I can update you with the details. And Brother Arif, once again, thank you so much. Have a nice weekend, and we hope we can see you once again sharing with us.
My pleasure.
Bye bye. Thank you.